It's not TV, it's HPO.
It's not TV, it's HPO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. No.
Elon Ma meet Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Jason Jaffe, you my friend. Jason Jaffe, you too. You famous.
You famous?
You famous.
No, you famous.
You famous.
No, you famous.
You famous.
Yes, we famous.
Oh, very good, very good. Oh, I love you. I love you. Goodbye, goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Jason Jaffe, my friend. Jason Jaffe, my friend.
Goodbye.
I love you, Jason Jaffe. Wow. I love you, Jason Jaffe. Wow.
When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph's has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
But by the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
And it was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Look, Gus Bottazzi is in the green room right now, and he's probably wondering, what have I gotten myself into? Seeing a little bit of Elon Ma meet Elon Musk, and as they say, you can take the man out of Africa, but you cannot take Africa out the man. This is not a Long Island accent. It's not even an island, but it is a long way away, originally from South Africa. I haven't played either of those intros for a while, and I hope Elon Ma is doing well and promoting his Dogecoin all the way back in China. A lot of people said that was a deep fake. It was most definitely not a deep fake. One of the most really interesting moments I had was recording that with him using Google Translator and myself into Mandarin back into English. It was a lot of fun. And you should see all the outtakes. In fact, the whole thing sounded and looks like an outtake. But anyway, enough about me. Let's get into the battle. We're talking power moves with my guest Gus Bottazzi. We're going to talk about Krav Maga, and I did try as best as I could and find a couple of inappropriate Sacha Baron Cohen clips where he was I forget the Israeli his Israeli persona, where he was trying to teach Krav Maga. But let's not worry about the imposters. Let's talk about the real deal. Let's talk about the real thing. Let's talk about the Coca-Cola of the space. We're not just going to talk about self-defense and Krav Maga. We're going to talk about Krav Maga for corporates as well, because Lord knows they need to get their they need to get their did I say kissed? Let's try that one again. They need to get their kicked every now and then. Now, it is 2024, and at the beginning of every episode, I like to share with you my why statement, which is really this idea of helping people get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever change. I was telling Gus in the green room earlier, I started the show literally March 10th or 11th of 2020. Everyone was stuck at home. Most people were stuck in general. Guess what? They were stuck before. A lot of people are still stuck in their ways, or just stuck feeling paralyzed or immobile or unable to move forward. And well, the opposite of being stuck is to get unstuck. And so 650 guests later, the show is going nowhere. I will tell you that today's episode, Gus is without question the best guest that I've ever had on the show. And yes, Gus, I do say that to every guest. And it's always true, because my most recent and latest episode is always my best. So that's what it means to get unstuck. What does it mean to return to growth? I started business coaching last year, already helping small and medium businesses, growing businesses, get what they want, help entrepreneurs frustrated get what they want from their business using an operating system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And thirdly, to become forever changed. This is the name of my third book, Forever Changed: How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. Because if we didn't take this quantum superposition position, right, this awful, terrible, tragic thing that disrupted and ended so many lives, but also at the same time created an opportunity for movement, for evolution, and for transformation. And that's what the book is about. But now it's time to talk seated soliloquy. And as I explained to Gus a little bit earlier, again in the green room, I'm seated and it's a monologue, hence seated soliloquy. But what I didn't say to him is that it's always connected to my guest. And today it's called, it's not called that. That's called, I need a producer. It's called, There is an I in Hero. So why do I talk about the fact that there is an I in Hero, even though you might say, wait a second, there is no I in Hero. But if you're listening to Gus Bottazzi, then there absolutely is an I in Hero, because he talks about the fact that you are your own hero. What does that mean? What does that mean, you are your own hero? There is a me in Hero. There is an I in Hero. There might be a we in Hero as well, if we're part of a family, a community, like the one that Gus has built with his studio, as he taught me, not his dojo, but his studio. What does it mean that there is a hero inside each of us? It means, I guess, that we are star of our own show, of our own story. We are the most important person, the protagonist in our own unfolding story. Now, let's just be clear. This doesn't mean you have license or permission to be a narcissist, right? This doesn't mean be self-centered, but it means recognize that somehow, somewhere, sometimes very deeply buried inside us, during these moments of discomfort or uncomfort, during these moments of self-doubt, during moments of having imposter syndrome, there is a hero inside. There is someone inside. Deep down, there is a moment, there is an opportunity to stand up, to be counted, to show spine, to fight and face a bully, and to lead by example. It is scary, it is hard, it's not always the easiest thing to do. But if you understand the power within, and if you can activate that power within, there is nothing that you cannot accomplish. You are not just your own hero. You are, in fact, a superhero. Believe that. And now it's time to make some power moves with my guest, Gus Bottazzi. Gus Bottazzi is a 35-year veteran of the martial arts. It's weird because he looks 34 to me, holding multiple black belts in Japanese karate and Israeli Krav Maga, the hand-to-hand combat system of the Israeli army. Gus is a black belt who has the distinction of training and being certified as a global instructor by 3 direct students of Krav Maga's founder, Imi Lichtenfeld. He's also certified through 5 of the most respected Krav Maga federations in the world: Krav Maga Worldwide, IKMA, IKMAC, Krav Maga Academy, and CT 707. A sought-after self-defense instructor and self-defense strategy speaker, Gus has given numerous workshops and seminars internationally to audiences ranging from law enforcement to women's empowerment organizations to Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Gus, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
So I'm going to start off the bat by saying, what do you call a Krav Maga black belt?
Well, anyone who trains Krav Maga is called a Kravist, Kravist. So when I first started my business back in 2008, I tried to come up with some little marketing slogan that would be catchy, that people want to wear it. So I wrote "Survival of the Kravist" as opposed to "of the fittest," and it didn't take off.
Survival of the Kravist. No, it didn't. But you also got it wrong. The answer to the question is "sir." That's what you call Krav Maga.
Yes,
same thing as
indeed.
what do you call someone with a gun, sir? So anyway,
Yeah.
Sir Gus Bottazzi, the Kravist of Kravistville, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was enjoying listening to your soliloquy, and yes, you very much speak from my book of self-empowerment, and the notion being that you are your own hero. There's a saying I came across several years ago, which I always come back to, and the saying is, "When seconds count, the police are minutes away." And when you reflect on that statement, it's not meant to be anti-law enforcement at all. I have only the deepest respect for what law enforcement does. But the realities of the world that we live in is we're surrounded by people all day, not everyone with the best of intentions. And when we are in that place where we are caught off guard, it's great Hollywood fodder to have the police storm in, or police cars come in, or an undercover show up. In reality, most of the work's going to have to be done by us. And self-defense, as it's taught across the industry, both Krav Maga and all other martial arts systems, tend to spend a lot of time focusing on how to do all these fancy moves. But what I try to talk about is you are empowered from the earliest stages of an engagement to leave sooner. And there's a timeline of an attack that I spend a lot of time talking about. And once you understand how that timeline works, you find that you have more and more options to escape and actually neutralize a problem before it ever becomes violent.
I promise never to get violent in front of you, and I hope that you never have to neutralize me. In fact, I've even updated your title now. So Gus Bottazzi, Chief Kravist.
Thank
you.
There
you go. You can see it's catching on. It just took a while. I've so there are a couple of things even in that little anecdote that resonated with me. One of them was this idea of immediacy, of procrastination, of just the power of immediacy. Now, we're obviously going to go back and we're going to talk about this bridge that you've built between the corporate world and the world of self-defense or Krav Maga. But talk a little bit about, like, if we just had to peel that back by one layer, the problem with hesitating, he who hesitates or she who hesitates is lost. There's more than just the ability to act in seconds. It's the ability to believe in your ability to make a difference, the ability to just, act first, think later, and trust that actually you're doing the right thing. That can't be easy, though.
It's not. And I'm glad you asked that question, because the reality is when people are confronted for the first time with something that would be viewed as threatening, okay, threatening is different. It's subjective, right? It could be how someone looks at you, speaks to you, handles you. Many women, and I'll use women as a starting point, but it certainly applies to men as well. They will start to second guess what they're feeling. And they'll start to say, well, I'm just being ridiculous. I'm being cynical. I'm being paranoid. And they will resist the actual thought that they may indeed be in danger or in harm's way. So rather than taking action in a manner which would allow them to start creating separation, evasion tactics, and leaving, they stay longer, and thereby giving their hostile person greater time on target. So it's a conversation that has a lot of psychology to it. There's a book written in the industry, it's well regarded, and I will certainly call it out because I require it as a read for all of my students. And if someone were to be an instructor under me, they must read this book as well. And it's called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. Yes. And that book, frankly, can save a lot of people's lives. So what it really gets to is this understanding that once I start to hear my own voice, my inside voice suggests that there's something that's amiss, if I start acting on it more immediately, I find myself out of danger much quicker. It's quite frankly, it's primal, it's Darwinian. It's why we're still on this earth.
I completely agree. And one of the things that I did when I wrote my my book, Built to Suck, the inevitable demise of the corporation and how to save it. So it's interesting. We talk about the corporate world, and I'm talking about the demise of the corporate world. But the commonality is this idea of the survival instinct. And the survival instinct that I studied is built on two things. One is self-preservation, and the other one is adaptation. And self-preservation itself has two contributing factors. One is fear, and one is pain. And it is the reason why the deer or the buck has this almost primal instinct to just dart out of nowhere, just because of that spidey sense that a predator is nearby. Trust your gut at the end of the day, because if you don't, the head is going to start to breed that virus of self-doubt.
Yeah, and as a side note to that, it's interesting when you look at the neurology, or we'll call it the psychology of a moment. Everyone understands fight and flight, right? So those are the first two things that we're taught. But there's a third, and it's freeze. So it's fight, flight, and freeze. So what people don't necessarily understand what freeze is your brain taking a moment and going through all of its memories to see if it has an answer for what it's being confronted with. So it's a very real process that your brain is undergoing. So when people have said in movies or even in real life, I saw my whole life pass before my eyes, that's actually factual. They're trying to divine an answer for a problem that they have no thoughts on. So one of the first things I tell my clients when they first start training, and it doesn't matter if they're in class number 1, 10, or 1,000, is every time you train, you're putting data in your data banks. And you're now in a position where if you come across something, you will not necessarily freeze as quickly because you will have had some introduction to this problem, this puzzle. And because you have something to work from, you can break the freeze and begin to act.
I want to talk something else that about Krav Maga. Actually, my late uncle was I think he was an eight or 9 Dan black belt in karate.
Right.
And the one thing that I always noticed about him when growing up was he was a man of peace. He never instigated, he never threatened, he was never confrontational. It was purely a martial art that created a sense of you don't attack until you're attacked. And so it was powerful. His power was in his serenity. And, it made me think later on in life that you never know who is a 200-pound weakling versus a 140-pound Krav Maga, expert. I think there's something powerful in that in terms of a life lesson, which is quite frankly never to judge a book by its cover, but more importantly is to always have that humility to just wonder, is this person who just cut me off in traffic or was, kind of rude to me in line, someone that's going to basically, knock the crap out of me?
Right. It's a great concept. If you viewed photographs of me with my main instructors, Alan Feldman and Rick Blitzstein, both amazing martial artists, both amazing Kravists, both students of Imi, neither of which are big men. They both weighed 155, 160 pounds. If you saw me next to them, you would imagine that I would just, toy with them, but in reality, it would be the reverse. So it's a great opportunity to understand that with martial arts, again, I'm going to steal from Hollywood, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? And I actually believe that statement. So if you ask any of my friends or my family, the likelihood of my ever laying hands on anybody is very, very low. I would never think to do it because I understand what the abilities that I have been trained to do are. And the last thing I ever want to do is engage in that manner. And I find that in my 35 years plus now of martial arts, just like your uncle, people of rank, people of ability, typically are the quietest ones, the calmest ones, the most humble. And those are the ones, frankly, that I understand will never engage unless there's absolute immediate threat.
Well, I have to say, speaking of which, you come to me today through a mutual acquaintance. Shout out to Dan Liu, a man who, until he made the introduction, I might have, bullied and physically tried to accost. But from now on, I will only refer to him as Sir Dan Liu. So a little shout out to him, and I know that he's watching today. Well, let's take a bit of a break from the corporate Krav Maga and go back. We have some private investigators that somehow fit into our budget here. As you can tell on the mixing board, we end up using loft instead of sound, etc. But we kind of went into your past. We really wanted to find the deep, dark secrets about you, and surprisingly, we didn't find any. But what we did find, well, there was, I was threatened. I'm just going to say I was threatened. So I'm just kidding. But what we did find out is that you are originally from Argentina. And we were discussing about Buenos Aires earlier. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, and why you share this. When I ask you for some fun facts, why this?
So Argentina was where I was born. My mother was born there, and there I am right there, and correctly dressed as well. So thank you for that.
And eating meat.
Eating meat, which is the absolute. I had through most of my childhood the pretty much the approximate diet of a puma. The amount of meat I ingested, but it brought me into a world where my parents brought me to the U.S. very young. And I spent most of my earliest childhood speaking Spanish only. And English is actually a second language for me. So as I grew up, I became more and more Americanized, and I'm a U.S. citizen. And I brought it up as far as a fun fact. It's because most people, I've had interesting conversations. Most people can't guess my nationality. I get either Italian, or sometimes I get somewhere like Greek, Eastern European kind of conversation. So it's interesting to me that Argentina never comes off anyone's lips.
It's so interesting because, again, it's funny how there's a little bit of a common theme about judging people based on how they might look, how their last name. I mean, clearly it's an obvious one. You see Bottazzi, it sounds, you would think Italian as well. And Krav Maga, I said, what's the Israeli connection? And leave them guessing, I guess, is the punchline, right? Which is, and as the old saying goes, never assume because you make an ass out of you and me.
Indeed.
So we went a little bit further and actually found out that you're not just brawn, you're brawn and brain. In fact, you have a degree in biochem and mathematics and a minor in acting. That sounds like a lethal formula for Krav Maga, right? You understand exactly how it all fits together, and you know how to put on a good show.
So I'll tell you what's funny, how you're putting that together. Let me tell you where there's actually a serious correlation to my background in Krav Maga. So one of the things that one of my instructors, my main instructor, Alan Feldman, would say is, what Krav is a game of chess. It's a game of kinetic chess. We are the smaller, the weaker, and the slower in the fight. That is the assumption set that was created when the system was built. So if we're the smaller, weaker, and slower, we have to be the smarter. So the conversation is always about being able to assess the situation in real time, playing this game of where should my body be in space? What's my next move? How am I one pace ahead of my attacker? So those are things which very much play to this sort of deductive reasoning and being able to sort of play this verbal game of judo as well, if you will. The acting side, funny enough, what I try to teach every one of my clients is once confronted with a person, it is in your best interest to act as if you are going to comply, act fearful, act as if you're going to do everything they say, because that disarms them further and allows you to do what you need to do without them anticipating any action on your part. So it actually does come together quite neatly.
We were talking earlier about Howard Stern, and I was saying how Howard Stern, someone that I've focused on and studied in terms of being a host and a talk show host and asking better questions. I unfortunately, I don't have Baba Booey in my ear feeding me with ideas or questions. But one thing that I noticed Howard would do is he would ask questions, or he'd come up with facts, where his guests would then say, I don't know where you heard that from. That's not true at all. That's completely inaccurate. And he'd be like, oh, really? What's the real story? And what he was doing, what I believe he was doing, was disarming them, because they felt like they were in the ascendancy. They were in control. You know, Howard and his whole team got the facts wrong, and they were going to set him straight. And the next thing, they ended up divulging, I don't know, items about their sex life. And like, I can't believe I even said that. But there's an interesting similarity here about this idea of creating a sense of not inferiority, but giving someone the false recognition that they're in control, when the reality is they're anything but.
And that's exactly what you want to accomplish, right? In the simplest terms. Okay, and I know we're not on a full camera here. When people envision a fight, right, whether it's something they've seen on YouTube, social media, or even in Hollywood, people strike this pose, fists clenched, hands by face, in this sort of bladed position, ready to go. And that is by far the worst thing you could ever do, because as soon as you do that, you've introduced to the attacker, it's on. And the reason they chose you, the reason any attacker chooses any victim, is the perceived belief that you're easy to go. So if I'm doing this and I already think I've got something on you, maybe it's a weapon, maybe it's strength, maybe it's size, I'm going to go. If I start, as Krav would have you, like this, hands up, shoulders in, elbows in, fearful face, or respectful face at least, the person now believes that they're going to get what they want with little to no issue. That relaxes them for that moment, so that if I have to then act on the next moment, they're caught off guard, and I'm now, to use your word, in the ascendancy. So it is very much a game of chess, as I said before, a game of reverse psychology, if you want to look at it that way. But there is very much that premise. So what I try to debunk is this idea that there's got to be this warrior spirit from the beginning. And I say, no, you're not a warrior in the beginning. You become a warrior immediately. And I will kind of finish off with this metaphor that was given to me when I was in Israel. And the metaphor is the following. All Kravists, those who train Krav, are hand grenades. You put a hand grenade on a table, and it sits there inertly and idly, doing nothing, until you pull the pin, and then it explodes. When we're doing this, we are the grenade sitting on the table. On first understanding that violence is about to happen, at first act of aggression, pin is pulled and I explode, and they don't see it coming. And that's very much the mindset.
I love it. Grenade. It's a great analogy. I want to take a step back for a moment and now talk about your third fun fact, which was really just a good segue, which is you clean up well, Gus. Let me just tell you, because
but I have a large head.
Apparently, and very poor Photoshop skills on my part. 20 years of corporate America, right, before you started teaching full time. So obviously you didn't, you martial arts or Krav Maga wasn't new to you, but I'm distinctly interested in this idea of what you learned from 20 years of corporate America that helped inspire and create this foundation to be able to teach full-time corporate Krav Maga. So we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What did you learn from these 20 years that has informed your particular entrepreneurial journey?
So another fun fact, or maybe not so fun if you're from the martial arts industry, the statistics of martial arts businesses surviving after they are initially created by martial arts instructors, black belts. There's a 90% failure rate of the martial arts industry within 18 months. And the reason for that is there's typically a real focus on excellent technique and excellent forms and teaching skills, and that's all fine. But what does not necessarily go hand in hand with that is a knowledge of how to run a business. So people might be very good instructors, but fail miserably as a business person because they don't understand the finer moments of back office or marketing or sales fulfillment or whatever it is that part of their business needs to be worked on. I was very fortunate that I came into teaching full time, having gone through the ranks of sales to ultimately being a senior vice president. Then I became a chief operating officer. I was president and CEO twice, took a company public. So with all of those backgrounds in my history, I approached this martial arts business, and it's a little boutique business by comparison to the businesses I was running. But the standard block and tackle you need to include to make sure a business survives. Thankfully, I learned along the way. I had very good mentors, and now I'm 15, 16 years later now, and I'm still in business. So I feel very fortunate for that. On the flip side, one of the things I recognized, because I did head up sales, and I headed up U.S. sales for Novell, I headed up global sales for multiple companies. Mobile executives are very real, right? People who live on airplanes and go to airports, and they're constantly from city to city to city. And these are people who can be in very good shape and whatever, but they don't necessarily understand because they're traveling at all hours of the day, driving at all hours of the day. They don't necessarily have full situational awareness. Where am I? What am I doing? Who's approaching me? Am I in trouble? Am I not in trouble? So part of what I'm trying to instill in corporate Krav Maga is sort of a program that says, for those of you in your job that have to be in airplanes or trains or cars all day to go to clients or go to different partnerships, learn the basic skills to keep you safe so that you can get home safer. And that's not something that HR has typically considered, but now that we're living in a sadly more violent world, basically if you watch the news, you see it, there's become more of a spotlight on that.
So let's take a step back and let's just kind of recognize that right now there is a key use case, which is people that are traveling a lot, that are on the road a lot. In this time now where there is road rage, there is plane rage, there is what I call time rage as well, impatience and frustration. And so this actually at its core is about keeping you safe, about a better self-awareness that's going to get you home safely. But let's build on top of that because it's not just about self-awareness that's going to keep you safe. It's also something that you talk about, which is awareness is key to living a peaceful life. I think am I wrong in saying it's not just self-awareness to avoid being attacked or attacking? It's also just being much more in tune or attuned to the environment and everyone around you.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yes. So there's many people who toss the word situational awareness around, and that's obviously very key to self-defense, and there's a lot of books written on it, and I give talks on it. But to your point, right, situational awareness is not just knowing where the exits are. That's helpful. It's also being able to take the temperature of a room, being able to understand who you're talking to and to get a sense of whether they are being agitated by what you're saying or not. Are they deeply interested in what you're saying, or are they trying to get to you for some other nefarious reason? So I'm a big believer in listening skills and being able to really pay attention to what's happening, not just in front of you, but around you. And that, makes you a much better conversationalist, makes you a better friend, family person, keeps you safe at the same time. So I'm a major believer in keeping your antenna up. As my wife very fondly likes to say, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use it in those proportions.
I have to address my elephant in the room, because I feel like these days I feel like I'm looking like an elephant. Would you be able to work miracles and wonders on a weakling like myself? Is it, because I think to myself, one of the things I've never shared this publicly before, but my uncle, the same uncle, he took me to karate, and I gave up after maybe 3 or 4 sessions in favor of joining the choir. So, you know, I mean, you know, that, and I don't think I'll ever admit that again. But there's another aspect to it, Gus, which is the aspect of quitting. You spoke about people that have started like self-defense or martial arts studios failing. There's another element about small businesses failing, and also in the corporate world, this idea of quitting and not being able to tolerate failure. So here's the fourth aspect of it, which is people coming and starting something like Krav Maga, joining a studio, joining a community, and then fading or quitting and not having the staying power. What do you say to because it's all the same thing at the end of the day. It's about endurance and stamina, mind over matter, and the ability to stay the course.
I agree. I'll actually bring it down to something more fundamental, and that is, it's your why. Why are you doing this? When I have people come into my studio, or I get phone calls during the week from people who are inquiring because they've seen me on Google or have heard about me, the first question I ask, without exception, is, what has brought you here? You know, sometimes it's mild curiosity. Sometimes it's a good movie. I just saw the John Wick movie and I want to move like that. And those are rare, but those happen. But many times it's because people have now been confronted by something. They've seen something on the news. They have children who are now about to go to college. I spend a lot of time throughout the year teaching co-eds and seniors who are about to head off to university for the first time. And they've come from very nice neighborhoods, and they've never really been confronted by anything that even looked like a problem. And their parents are deeply concerned that when they go to university, whichever city they go, they'll be woefully ill prepared to deal with someone that might be hostile. And hostile doesn't mean because it's this city, it's hostile. It's wherever there's alcohol and drugs and people party and people act wildly, that's the first time you might end up being confronted by it. So the notion of a why am I doing this? So when people quit, it's normally because they didn't see what they were doing as addressing their why. My favorite story I tell is, there was a woman who came to me, young woman in her 30s, and she was very quiet and meek, and she said, I need to train. And I said, well, what brings you here? And she started to kind of tear up a little bit. I said, you don't have to answer that if it's making you uncomfortable. And she said, no, I want to talk about this. And without going into all of the details, she had been she'd been violently raped at knife point, and she needed to. Obviously, she survived it, and I won't go into the rest of her story. But she came into the studio because she said, I need to redo that whole moment and learn what would be the correct answer. And I said, so how do you want to start? She goes, right from the floor. So she laid down on the floor with her permission. I sat on top of her and I held a plastic knife. And I said, you really want to start? She goes, I have to start here. And she had tears welling in her eyes. But we got through that moment, and she stayed with me for 4 years.
Wow, what a story. I guess my why would be about self-discipline, self-awareness, that situational awareness, and the ability to create and get to the next level in terms of discipline and structure that would create a foundation for more intuitive thinking, acting, connecting, communicating, and to your point, reading the room. When do I start?
I'd love you to come in. I mean, it's I'll tell you what's fun when you talk about self-discipline and all of that. Those are aspects that you build. Those are the great add-ons that you don't even think about, but you end up getting. Training, by any kind of training. I don't care if you're training in fencing, Krav Maga, painting, whatever. In order to achieve goals, you have to commit, and you've got to commit with consistency. You know, and without willpower, you never start. Without consistency, you'll never finish, right? And consistency is what gets you to where you want to be. So the people that have stayed with me for years, and it's not that you have to. What they find is the journey is the point. There is no black belt that they're going for as far as destination. They just realize every time they come in and train, they feel better about themselves, they feel stronger about themselves, and they will comment to me that they are more aware when they're traveling on an airplane or on a train or at a restaurant. They'll notice things that they never once saw before, and that makes me feel good.
Gus, you're sounding like Yoda at the moment. I just want you to know that.
Thank you. Thank
Consistency, you will. Willpower. No. Sir Daniel Liu, who is watching, said, great interview covering such a diverse array of topics. I guess that's his way of saying you've got ADHD within Gus's background and skills and experience. So Sir Dan Liu. Well, while we have this frame, I always try and find a quote. And I found this one that was particularly interesting to me, Gus. Remember, there are no rules in Krav Maga. Always defend and attack at the same time. Always fight with aggression and never go down. And so there were a couple of things that really spoke to me in this quote. And well, first of all, there's this idea of, and you can, feel free to add, riff, agree, disagree, but there's this concept of no rules, which is interesting to me. I want you to talk to that. And then even more intriguing is this idea of always defend and attack at the same time. That was like unique. What does that mean to defend and attack? So which one do you want to take on first? Like this, by the way.
Yeah,
take it on like this. Okay, exactly.
So let's talk about the no rules piece first. So again, another cute saying in the industry: if you're fighting a fair fight, your strategy sucks. There is no such thing in a violent encounter as a fair fight. There are no rules. All that matters is getting home safe. And again, another saying I like to make is the first rule of self-defense is believing that you are worth defending. So from the moment somebody is in my face and doing things to me which would presume, harm to me or someone I care about, I'm not worried about what would be considered okay in a ring, in a cage, and in mixed martial arts and boxing, and none of that matters. We act with full commitment and full aggression, and things that are so unsavory, such as scratching, gouging an eye, biting, as much as that doesn't look like cool martial arts as Hollywood would portray, is very effective self-defense. Again, I teach all the strikes, all the kicks, everything you would see in a standard martial arts system. But the difference here is based on where I am, what targets are available to me and how can I access them. And sometimes a bite, an eye gouge, a scratch across the surface of the body, those are things that would be disallowed in judges and scorecards. I have no such problems with that. As it relates to attacking and defending at the same time, that is a central theme, central principle to the system. So when Imi created the system in the 30s, he was a black belt in Aikido, judo. He was a boxer, a wrestler. He was a fencer. And ironically, which most people forget, he was an award-winning dancer. All of those things mattered because it involved understanding how the human body works, which he had an encyclopedic knowledge of. And he understood how martial arts are traditionally taught. And back in the 20s and 30s, the standard concept was everything was done on a 2 count. You block on the first beat and strike on the second. Everything was a 2 count, whether it was karate or judo or aikido, everything was always on a 2. By virtue of that, he said, Krav Maga must always be done on the 1. So as I am blocking, I strike at the same time. I am doing twofold so that the attacker cannot process defense at the same time as his offense. So as he's recapturing himself from the strike, I continue forward. So everything that we do is done on the count of 1.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize we'd be dancing together as well. So waltzing with Bottazzi. It's amazing, and it's amazing to think about. Whether it's acting, whether it's dancing. This seems like a complete system. That's what it seems like. It seems like it's a complete system because it mirrors life and it is a reflection of life. It is both a mirror and a window, if you will, and There's certainly more to it than meets the eye.
It's a system. I've been training in the system now. I'm in my 20th year of training it. And to give you context, I came into Krav Maga as a 14-year veteran of karate. Now, what I'm going to say is by no means any sort of disrespect or diminishment of karate. I was a third-degree black belt. I was also teaching. And I came into my first Krav Maga class, and they paired me off with a person who had 6 months of experience of just Krav, reasonably my size. 14 years, third-degree black belt, 6 months, no belt of any recognition. And for the next hour, he owned me. He moved me around like I was a dish rag. And it was absolutely driving me crazy. I could not understand why all the things I knew how to do were ineffective or trumped by anything he did. And the reason for that, to your point of this being a complete system, we in Krav realized that the sum total of our objectives is that we want to be done within 8 seconds. So from the moment I engage an attacker, from the moment I am leaving my attacker, I am done in 8 seconds. Systems such as karate and judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and others, again, not disrespecting what they represent, they are created in the framework of a game. There's a sport element to it. There are points, there are weight classes, there are belts, there are judges. So everything I do there is under the span of a 2-minute round or a 3-minute round or a 5-minute round. So I'm coming in as a karate guy, staying here, working, thinking I'm going to spend some time on this guy, and he's got me done and down within 8 seconds. So it's not just that the system is complete, its thought process is different. We're playing a different game. I have no interest on being attached to my attacker longer than I have to. So the framework of TOT, or time on target, is very much what I talk about. I don't want to spend more than 8 to 10 seconds at the most attached to this person.
I was thinking as you were talking about the idea of when you said he moved me around, it made me think of dancing. It made me think not that I've ever been on Dancing with the Stars or ever will be, but there's the concept of leading, right? Someone leads and someone follows. And so essentially this person was leading, and you had no choice but to follow or fall in line. And and a dance in 8 seconds. So interesting to me. Now let's move back to something that we discussed right at the beginning, which is the concept of confidence or self-confidence. This idea of sometimes, our gut, our instinct tells us to move quickly, be decisive, but when we hesitate, head trash, imposter syndrome, we start to doubt, we start to self-doubt as well. One thing that you say is self-confidence is both attractive to friends and a deterrent to attackers. So again, there's a duality, isn't there, Gus, right? It's the same self-confidence that is working positively for some and negatively or adversely for others.
Right. Their motivations are different. And in fact, they're diametrically opposed. A friend will wish you to succeed, will wish you to flourish, will see you, will be happy if you, in fact, are happy, right? So when I come into a room, if I'm feeling good and feeling confident, that energy flows out of me and you and all people. And those who are close to us and care about us will look at that and say, that's great. Gus is having a good day. He's in a good mood. This is great. If somebody, conversely, has bad intentions for us and trying to do something against us, and they see that same energy, that confidence, it puts doubt in their mind of, can I take this guy? Is he someone that knows something more than I thought he did? So it really does work energetically. And I'm a big believer that many self-defense moments are won for the first moment of touch by virtue of how you approach. So I teach everybody as an example. And my wife has told me this, and my daughter has told me this. When I'm out with them, whether it be a restaurant, a bar, doesn't matter, they've noticed that whenever anyone walks into the room that we happen to be occupying, I will make eye contact with them every time. I didn't even realize I did that. Now that they've pointed it out, I do understand that I do that. So as you walk into this room, if I do not know you, I will look up, I will look at you with the eye, and then I will go back to my conversation. And effectively what I am doing is I'm saying to that person, I see you. And that is very unnerving for somebody who may have bad intentions because they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be caught. So as soon as I've shown recognition of them, if I was on their target list, I've now been removed.
Look, I mean, I got to, this one was too easy, Gus. I see you, and if you get out of line, you're going to end up in the ICU. So,
okay.
as I said,
I see what you did there. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's why they pay me the big bucks here as well.
Yeah.
So let's just do that quickly. So let's make eye contact, and I just want you to know that I have no ill intentions with you or anyone associated with
Great.
you. I love it. And, Gus, we're living in a world today where our kids, we're struggling as parents. Our kids are glued to the screen. They're not making eye contact. They're not even talking to adults making eye contact. It just seems like it's like a basic connection as well when two humans are together, that they should be making eye contact. So I think it's not just about threats. It's about being able to just kind of restore this very primal need or importance of being able to connect via our eyes.
I'll add a little bit to that. So I agree. So eye contact is the first connection we're going to make to a person. And then the second would be voice, conversation. And what most people, again, I mentioned earlier, the timeline of an attack, the earlier I recognize that there's a problem, the sooner I can leave that problem. If I'm late in understanding where I am versus a potential attacker, vocal cues, right? De-escalation through vocal discussion, dialogue will win. There was this incident that played out a couple of years ago. There was an apple harvest festival up in Southington, where I live in Connecticut. And I was there with my wife and some friends, and we finished the festival and we went into our local bar just to have a little drink before going home. And a person who I did not know, had never met before, who was clearly well intoxicated, confronted me in front of the bar, thinking I was somebody else, and started yelling at me, harassing me, calling me all sorts of four-letter words, wanting to engage me violently. And the bar froze. Everyone stopped because they figured there was going to be this big violent action that was about to play out in front of them. And all I did is I looked at him, I smiled, and I said, "You got the wrong guy, buddy." And I walked away. And what's so interesting is he was so primed for a punch or for something physical that as soon as I said, "You got the wrong guy, buddy," he literally had no idea what to do. And he walked out of the bar shaking his head. And what's funny is the rest of the evening, all the drinks are on the bar. They bought me and my group drinks because they were so happy that no violence played out. But that's simply what it is. It's using verbal. It's understanding what's happening and using the verbal ability to take a person away from this violent action.
Had he persisted, had he then grabbed you, would you have struck? Is that the right? Would you have struck, or would you again have used voice and eye contact and given him one more chance?
So the words I use go to the point of touch. From the moment that you touch, I touch back. Now, another great quote from Emi, which I would always say whenever I can. Emi challenged all of his students, all Kravists, with one saying. And the saying goes the following: "You should be so good that you don't hurt them." So there are a series of techniques and principles within the system that would have allowed him to, let's say, touch me, and I could have manipulated him by locking his spine out and just dropping him to the floor. And there would have been no pain, no damage, no bleeding, no bruising. It would have been nothing more than me manipulating him. And that's part of the system as well, because you need to understand what your objective is for that moment. My objective would not have been to harm him. My objective would have been to neutralize him. And for that, it would have just been sitting him in front of me.
Know thine own power, right? With great power comes great responsibility, but also there is so much power and confidence that comes from knowing your own power.
Correct.
So I just want to, kind of the last thought is, I just want to take that aspect of confidence just one step further. many people are suffering from lack of confidence. And you almost have two ends of the continuum, Gus. You've got this fear, this self-doubt, this lack of confidence, and then on the flip side, maybe a fear of becoming overconfident, hubris, arrogant, being perceived as arrogant. How do you find the line? How do you find the balance between too much and too little when it comes to confidence?
So self-awareness is an important cue here, right? You got to know what you got and what you don't got, right? So as the old saying goes, it ain't bragging if you can back it up. So I'm a big believer that if you understand what your skill set is and you have an honest assessment of it, you can be confident without being overconfident. But I have always looked at the world, and again, the system tells us this. I assume my attacker is bigger, stronger, and faster, but I also assume they know more than me. I assume they're carrying a weapon. I assume they have others about to jump in. I look at the world not in a cynical way, but I look at the world from an accounting of don't assume you have it all figured out and always be listening. Back to my 2 ears, one mouth. Judge based on what you're hearing and seeing. Don't judge based on assumption. And that goes for yourself. Don't assume you're going to be able to do things that you've never done before. So I try to keep a very real litmus test of what's really within my toolkit. And I also do the same thing when I look at other people as well.
If I could reframe your frame, and which is easy for me to say because I'm hiding behind the keyboard. But your assumption is that you don't assume, actually. That is the only assumption that you make, is you don't assume anything. And it is in being able to not make those dangerous assumptions that actually keeps you humble, open, and agile. And I actually think it's just an interesting way to kind of reconcile the idea of assumptions. Assumptions can kill, I guess, and get you killed.
Yeah, assumptions go a long way towards making critical mistakes, and that doesn't help anybody. So you have to be honest with what you're looking at and be honest about what you have within your abilities. And a black belt in karate, black belt in Krav Maga, black belt in BJJ, it doesn't matter what the skill set is only as good as their abilities that moment. If I have a bad headache, if I am drunk, if I have a bad head cold and I'm not feeling particularly well, am I still a black belt? Probably not an ability anyway. So I have to also be reconciling with what's going on within my body at the same time.
Well, good news, everyone. Krav Maga is for everyone, even me, even Joseph Jaffe. And I was on your website, corporate.kravmaga.com. I'll share some of those links in just a moment. There is the article about Be a Grenade. Just make sure that it doesn't go off in your own hands. But Gus, this is great. I tell you why, because as we wind down, actually Daniel, Sir Daniel says, one thing that I recall Gus telling me is that Krav Maga is not about memorizing a series of techniques. It is about Krav tailoring itself to fit your specific abilities. That was key to me. It's like Fight Club. The only, you don't talk about, the only rules are there are no rules. You don't talk about, I don't know, whatever. But Gus, it was so wonderful to have you come in, and, I feel more focused. I feel more disciplined. Whether I'm able to actually take all of this warm and fuzzy feeling inside me and show up, I'm sure Dan is going to be working me in the other green room as well. But I feel like it might be a good time of my life to actually step up and instill this sense of discipline and structure, accountability in my life beyond just work practices. You can follow Gus on the Insta at Gus Bottazzi. You can find out more about corporate Krav Maga at corporatekravmaga.com/Krav. Maga is for everyone, but if you didn't know that by now, then you just weren't paying attention. And Gus, the most important thing is, as I was saying, I end every show with the ability to determine if you were approved or not. But who better to determine that Gus Bottazzi is approved than Chuck Norris himself?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go.
I feel like my life is now complete. I feel good about that. Thank you.
What do they say? The reason lightning doesn't strike the same place twice is because Chuck Norris and Gus Bottazzi, is kind of on their tail. So just make sure. Sleep with one eye open and the other eye, make eye contact with the next person that you come into contact with. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.